Well, hello, this is Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to our program. And you know what? I am so excited because last week I got to go back to New York, my stomping ground, but I got to go to the United Nations, which for me, oh my gosh, I haven't been there in years. And it was because there's very important meetings happened last week, and they're actually continuing this week too. We're going to talk all about this, give you a little peek into what happens at the United Nations. So joining me today is our Priest for Life main person who handles the UN for us. He's been doing it for decades, is Bob Lalonde. Bob, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Janet.
Well, of course, as I said, I haven't been there in years, but you've been that faithful source of going faithfully to all these different meetings, representing Priests for Life, because we are an NGO, which stands for non-governmental organization. So for those of our listeners here who are not quite familiar with that, could you just explain what does that mean?
Sure thing. But let me just say that although you hadn't been there in years, you sure made up for it during this past week because you were seen everywhere by everyone in a very short period of time. So hats off for that. NGOs are non-governmental organizations that are recognized, a certain number of them, by the United Nations. And we get to interact in the various meetings that they host. So for instance, the one we were at is called CSW, Commission on the Status of Women. So we get to participate, we get to submit statements. Occasionally you get to present statements as well, but it's basically interacting with the various member states. So that's what gives us that privilege to be there. And we've been doing it for 22 years now.
That's great. Well, and from the minute we went through, of course, I had to get my special badge and go through security, high security and everything else. We get onto the outside of the UN, and I know we stopped at some key place. The first one I want to talk about is that it's like a monument or whatever with a gun, right? Explain to everybody what that symbol is.
So obviously it's a revolver, and the idea is that the barrel is twisted and turned so it won't work. So the intent is to convey ending violence throughout the world.
Right. And of course, I stood there and did a little video that said, yes, I'm all for ending violence around the world, but let's start with violence for the unborn, right? And I made that point, standing in front of the revolver. Then there was another, it looked like the world, nice big world, but it was all cracked. Explain the significance of that display.
So it's kind of the same idea, is that the world is not well. It's in parts and pieces, and somehow it has to come together. And you came up with another catch for that too.
Yes, I did. And I said, yes, it is cracked. The world is cracked because they're destroying babies and damaging their moms. So if we can just stop abortion worldwide, the world will be such a nicer place, right?
And that's kind of what we do when we're there too, right? I mean, it's linking to issues that are of the moment and tying it into abortion and getting people to get a better sense of protecting the unborn child.
Right. So then from the minute we entered in, you could feel an energy there. And as you know, I came upon, and they're from African countries because these ladies have these beautiful outfits on. And of course, Janet, not shy and bashful, she goes up to them and said, oh, would you mind? Can I take a picture? I love your outfits. And I asked them, where are you from? So I met two delegations. One was from Liberia and the other was from Nigeria. And both of them, you saw, Bob, their reaction. Thank you for President Trump. Thank you for President Trump. And what I want our people to understand is elections have consequences, not just in America, the world. And Bob, you've been going to the UN for many, many years. So you understand that you've been there during the Clinton, Obama, and then when we had Bush and Trump, and now Trump again. Explain to everybody, why were those African women just like cheering, thank you, America? Explain the back and forth pendulum that happens based on who's in the White House.
Sure. So policies make a huge difference depending on who's in the Oval Office. And so, for instance, that Trump effect, as you alluded to, was visible throughout. So changes take place, either they're protecting life or they're not protecting life, depending on who's in charge, kind of thing. So a practical example is the Geneva Consensus Declaration, which was put in place under the first Trump administration. And as soon as Biden takes over, he withdraws us from the Geneva Consensus Declaration, which is basically a pro-life, pro-family, a declaration that 40 countries had signed. So that's the difference between one administration being in and one being out. And what we were seeing in particular at this conference is the political declaration that was agreed upon by countries did not have the word, reproductive health in it, or abortion, obviously. So that was a big difference. So the pushback from these Geneva Consensus countries and the United States had a huge impact around the world.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was thrilled about that, because, they use all those code words, like you just said, for abortion, reproductive health, and this and that. But the other impact I noticed when I was chatting with some of those African ladies in their beautiful outfits was that the U.S. aid to some of these impoverished countries, it becomes during the Biden administration with a catch to it. Like, so for example, if they need our technology and some money to approve just basic drinking water, as in some of these countries, we take for granted, the water, our clean water coming out of the tap, which when I was a kid, we drank, but now you got to drink it out of a bottle. But in these countries, they don't have a lot of them in certain areas, clean running water. And one of the great things America has done for some of these impoverished areas is to help provide our technology, our money to help them have clean water and other things like that. Basic human needs. But what the Biden administration did, that these ladies were telling me, they want to attach contraception and abortion to the basic human needs help. And of course, in those countries, they don't want that. The African nations, as you know, they're pro-life, most of them. And so they say, well, if we have to do that, we don't want that in our country. I'd like you to comment on that. And also, the same is true with the African bishops in the church, isn't it? That they also give that a great pushback, not like the American bishops that are silent on the issue. But could you explain to everyone about that, Bob? Because that's an important point.
Totally spot on and a great observation. You might recall a few years back, I was in Nigeria for 2 weeks. And so we visited different communities throughout Nigeria, and including spending time with the bishops and in seminaries. So yes, that is a real problem. And that's why one of the things that DOGE, for instance, addressed under the Trump administration was USAID. In fact, it was the first victim, if you will, because of all the money that was being squandered on LGBT and gender ideology and all the things that these countries were not looking for. And yet that's what we insisted that they get if they wanted to get basic aid. So that is something that's already being impacted. We saw that at the United Nations. There are often 10,000 people, they're mostly women from these countries. And I noticed this year there's closer to 4,000 or even less perhaps. So we're funding people to come in to promote abortion in many cases from these countries. So they're looking for something very different. They're looking for basic aid, basic rights, basic care for women and their pregnancies, 1,000 days of life kind of thing. So care from infancy right through. So their requests and demands are very different from what we're pushing on them.
Right. And so I know they're very excited about the DOGE and the USAID because now there's a good hope that the money is going to be redirected to them for the good things. One of the things people don't realize, and I know a lot of our statements have addressed this in the past, that we take childbirth in our country for granted, basically, as you know. The amount of maternal deaths in childbirth is very, very low in the United States because we do have very, very good OBGYN care here, but not so in a lot of these countries, right, Bob? And so isn't part of our work and the pro-life NGOs is to shine a spotlight on, we need to increase the health of women during their pregnancies. And like you said, so just explain some of that battle a little bit.
So the first 1,000 days of life is what we're talking, conception through year 2 kind of thing. If we were providing that kind of support, proper nutrition, prenatal, postnatal, it would make a huge difference. One of the challenges we find in some of the countries, Asia, for instance, in India, and that was a theme of our own statement this year, was sex selection, that preference for the male child, to the point where they'll abort girls if they know they're going to have a girl child, they call her, or an orphanage kind of thing. That could be the outcome for somebody like for a girl child. So we're seeing that there's a change in education. We're trying to get people to realize the benefits of girls and the wisdom of women and the genius of women. And if you imagine, if you can abort a girl child, how are women going to be treated as girls and as young women and mothers? Obviously, it gives a bad perception. So that's one of the things that our statement addressed is, recognizing the beauty of womanhood. So that's something that we talked about there too.
Right. And then just to go back for a minute, because we use that phrase, the Geneva Consensus.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know what that is. So can you just explain it a little bit more? Because that's such a good thing. And now under Trump, I would imagine there's going to be a push to get more countries to sign on to it now, right?
Yeah, they just signed up like after the first week of being in office. And so it's basically a framework. It's recognizing that there's no right to abortion in international law, despite what people keep throwing back at us, these various countries, particularly see that from Nordic countries, Canada, for instance, as well. So there's no right to abortion in international law. And notwithstanding the attempts to make us believe there is, it's just not true. So that's something that we see as being important and making a big difference, is clearing that up. And the Geneva Consensus does that. It talks about authentic healthcare for women and for families. And so this is something I think the administration brought us back into and is going to focus on for the next several years.
That's great. And finally, if people are really curious about these meetings at the UN last week and this week, they're going on still. Yep. What's the website you can visit just to kind of read some of the goings on? Because maybe people by our conversation are interested and say, oh my goodness, I want to learn more. Well, if you're that kind of person, you want to study it more, tell us first where you go for this meeting to look at what's going on. And then as time goes, what's the best website to go to keep an eye on international stuff at the UN?
So you can definitely go straight to the UN website, and they have it there. So these meetings are, even the ones that we were at, are also virtual. So you can be there, and we can't be there all the time. We're blessed to have other pro-life groups that are there full-time and doing some work. And we often go there in part to support them, because at certain times they need more assistance. So you can find it at the United Nations website. It's live TV. So they either have them, from historically from meetings past or meetings that are current, but it's best to go right to that. You can also see on our own website, you can go to Priests for Life International and see some of our work there too. So you can follow it that way.
That's great. All right. And when you say United Nations website, it would be what? UnitedNations.org?
Yes.
Okay. Well, sometimes you got to spell things out, Bob.
You bet. Or UN.org. You'll find it. It comes up pretty quickly.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll tell you, I had a great time in New York with you last week, and I look forward to any future happenings that we can do, because, I don't mind going there and meeting with the people and encouraging them. I think that was so important. So thank you for all you do, Bob, to keep the ship steering greatly in that world of the United Nations, which can be very daunting when you first walk in there, boy. You can be like, oh my goodness, where do I start? So you were great. And of course, I got to do a fun thing. Was I went to the UN post office inside the building, and I actually mailed postcards to my grandchildren from the United Nations. So that was kind of fun too. So again, thank you for all you do, Bob, to bring the Stop Abortion, Help Women message to the United Nations. And brothers and sisters, thank you too, because the final word is elections have consequences. And I expect for the next few years, Bob, I think we're going to make a lot of progress at the UN now, thanks to President Trump. So thanks for all you do. God bless.
Thank you.
Years ago, I got to know Father Frank on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. He joined with a number of people with us. And I saw him as a very sincere, earnest young man. And I was delighted when he was my student in the seminary and he was ordained. And then I started to hear about his work with life. And I've been very pleased and amazed to stand on the side and see all that has been accomplished. There's no doubt in my mind this is a work of God, a work guided by the Holy Spirit. And now Priests for Life has a large organization, a number of people working here, quite a large number, and including a number of priests. And the priests throughout the country who have many responsibilities put among their interests and care Priests for Life. So I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to you for supporting this apostolate. In a way, you could say there is nothing more important than life. When there are dangerous situations, we call an ambulance. All the traffic stops. The ambulance comes to save a person's life, perhaps of a heart attack. Here we're talking about saving possibly millions of innocent, unborn children. Isn't it terribly important? Isn't it of a great, great significance? And so I would encourage you, please, in your generosity, help Priests for Life. And I particularly appeal my fellow members of the clergy to support life and Priests for Life.